The early management pillar, so early equipment management, early product management. Integral parts of the TPM philosophy, usually a bit later, but let's go through them. Hello, I'm Tom, welcome to my channel. We'll talk about continuous improvement in an industrial setting. And you know, today's video was actually sort of brought to you by the good folks at Oatly, the oat milk, oat yogurt type of things, because I work with them as a consultant and they requested videos as part of the package. This was a video long in the coming. I didn't really know how to get all the thoughts together, but thanks to the fine people over there, they just said, come on Tom, focus, get it done, and that's why you're getting it today. Now, what are those early management pillars? They are a part of TPM philosophy, where you basically say, you know, if we're getting a new machine, a big overhaul of current machinery that's basically new as well, or we're bringing a new product into our production, let's make sure that it really is a better machine or better product, that we get the lessons that we learn in our daily operations into it, and also let us really make sure that we get it into the factory, ramp it up, it works, a flying start, so to say. Now, what do we then sort of see happening as an ideal, and what usually happens? See, if we imagine and we can take equipment for now, but the early product management pillar, it has almost the same set of design principles. The philosophy is the same, and I would definitely not fault companies combining them. The main reason to split these two is because the people on the teams are very different. And so the people you interact with are very different. A CapEx type of project where you invest in a big new machine is a different type of project. It just works with different rules, different people that are in there. It is much more mechanical, while a product thing is much more into the processes. So that is the best reason to still keep them apart, which again, also many companies do, I think most. But for both of them, the idea is that you first design it, and you basically don't touch your factories at that moment yet, right? So here it really is getting all of the requirements, getting the design of the machines, doing tests maybe somewhere else. Doing a couple of tests in your own factory can definitely be part of it, but not too much. And then at some point you say, well, we think it's ready. Let us start up the new line or product and reach our target output, our target performance. And then after the project, really put things in place, train people, got every small problem that usually happens sort of in the beginning out. It really works, and we hand it over to our daily operation. We take it into normal production. So what we of course want is that in the design phase, you really don't touch the factory yet. And then we make a pretty quick startup, and we even exceed our, so not our wildest dreams, but our design goals, and because we have a couple of learnings here and just make it even better. Now, what do we often see in practice? In practice, we often see that we already start buggering the factory a little bit with a poorly running machine before we even formally finish the design. But then we go into the startup and, oh, it actually does something, but then problem. And here we start problem solving, here we start redesigning stuff, training people. Well, training comes a bit later usually. We see things in practice that are keeping us at a too low level. But we fix all of those problems, and when we're almost at the goal, you know, we hand it over to production. In fact, sometimes we even see that there is more effort there when the project is formally already over. Some of the project specialists, project manager, are still kept on staff just to hash out the last couple of problems that were with the machinery. The own maintenance department has to sort of take a project completion role. That definitely happens as well. And in the end, quite often we don't reach all of the specification, all of the design requirements, because here we had to redesign a couple of things. Pressure is very high once you're in that startup phase. And it's just, okay, let's renegotiate, let's take out a couple of things, which can, for instance, include, let's make it less easy to maintain, right? The access to your motors or your drive chains is suddenly a lot more difficult. Or, the design speed maybe was a bit too high. Now in hindsight, we see we should drop it by 10%. Like all kinds of reasons why it doesn't reach its full intended purpose. Then the thing is, when are we working the most? And so the project team is focused on project costs, and this is a bit the same discussion that we have with corrective and preventive maintenance. Purely from a maintenance standpoint, corrective maintenance is usually cheaper because you only fix those things that are broken. In preventive maintenance, unless you are very good at it, you also do fix a couple of things that are not broken yet, or you fix it you replace it a few months too early, things like that, right? So purely from the maintenance side, it tends to be more expensive, especially in the beginning, when your process and equipment knowledge is not that high yet. But even later. Now, the overall cost for the whole operations with preventive maintenance are significantly lower. Why? Because you have the reliability, because you don't make all the costs in production, in operation. That's it. Maintenance has their own very narrow cost, but they have a huge effect also on operations. The same is true with projects. So you have your own project cost and your project deadline, and how many hours you spend on training and on maybe an external project manager, right? They also take fees, and how many redesigns did you do? And then you give it over to production. So if you do that, most of that sort of work in the startup phase, then you're only going to be reacting to those problems and those issues that really need your attention. And purely for the project, that is a bit cheaper. So what you often see is that during the design phase, it's a small team, right? It's just the engineering department, almost nothing going on. But then here, we start to do a little bit already. And around the startup, we really start ramping up how much work we have. And we see these problems, we ramp it up even more. And then when we get some results, it already goes down. And, when we hand it over to production, we sort of stop again. So there is a big concentration of work in that startup phase. And the concept of early equipment management, early product management, is to move that work into that design phase. So we want to do a lot of work here and then pretty quickly build it off. Well, probably until the end there in production. Now, that work, as I said, may be a bit more than purely what we would have if we only react to the more critical, sort of experience-driven things. But the biggest challenge, of course, is, so what work? What are we going to do before the whole startup, and how are we going to organize that so that it's effective? Because we can be working on plenty of things, and technically, right, here people are already, well, this maybe is also not very fair, a small design team is already working really, really well with good experience and good systems to even get to that basic system. So if they still have design changes, when can you train people? Is it really needed to put all of these safety ideas and briefs in there? If we're going to do all kinds of workshops with quality and safety and what operators might like, then we're going to redesign a machine that our equipment manufacturer has already designed. Oh, that will increase the design so much that it just becomes infeasible. Now, those type of things are very real questions. And so you cannot go about it nilly-willy. So what do we do when we're building up this way of working, this pillar? There are basically three activities, three sort of systems that you want to have in place. And the first of those, and they are not in any particular order of priority per se, right? These all three need to be in place. The first is when we take our cycles of excellence, our management system, and I'll go over this form a bit more in future videos, I think, but if you have seen my videos on the infinite loop, this is it. Your management system, your daily learnings, everything you do in daily practice. So that comes from your performance control, it comes from your improvement teams, improvement efforts, and it also comes from your strategy. All of that you learn in daily practice. And you solve problems and deviations and you make process improvements along the way. But during those activities, you will also learn a lot about your process, and you will learn the weak points in the process, and you will learn what generates losses. And here, anything that you can alter in your current procedures, you probably will. But there will be a bunch of things that are, for this we need to really change the machine. So it's not feasible right now. Or with this current machine, these are the optimal settings, but purely from a physics standpoint, we would expect there is a better way, right? So information like that, process know-how, that has to go into a central repository, into a central know-how database. These are basically your technological know-how, your technological specifications. This is what a central engineering team should be managing. And we want, especially if we're a bit bigger than just a single factory, if we're having also our own type of machinery, so any business that does things a bit in their own way needs this. This is sort of like your intellectual property. You just don't sell to others. This is your own. This is what makes your business so effectively yours. How do you get that info in? That has to work, right? It can be in all kinds of reporting sheets, sharing practices, benchmarks, but get that system to work. Then a project flow, right? We have a number of steps in our project, and we want to standardize also what the steps are, but more importantly, we want to have our gates in place. So we want to have the stage gates where, also who has to sign off, who has to check, but also which steps do we use in our management of CapEx projects, of new product development, of what is the order of things. Now, I do not suggest that you make a 500-page handbook of how to run a project. Projects differ quite a lot. Also, so project management philosophies and tools and methods, they change. Let that to the project manager. Let that to project management as a broader profession. But what you really need is that a project is a part of your improvement agenda, right? Of your management as well. So how does that project report back into my improvement and maybe even my control cycles, but into my factory management? These stage gates, what needs to be checked, who needs to approve, more or less, which data, what content will we discuss, what type of decisions are made. That is vital for smooth project running. So that's not managing the project itself, as in internally within the project team. It is how does our organization manage a project as something that's going to give us good results in the end. And checklists. So, and these may number up to 500, but please, not full page, full text. But checklists, they go with the project phases, but they are also things like, how do we, did we train these and these people? Do we have these stakeholders? So make those checklists, make those reminders of whom do I need to involve, whom do I need to train, which types of specs do I need to check, which systems do I need to go through, all kinds of, did we not forget any step? These basically are your learnings from the internal project management. So we want to know this checklist, is it any good? If we take a good hard look, do we see that it is a good checklist or not? Do we need to add things to it? Now, how do we do that? How do we know, did we get info in? Did we get the process know-how? Did these stage gates serve managing the project from our leadership, from our organizational management perspective? And did we not forget anything? Or maybe there was just too much on the list. You need active feedback, evaluation of a project. So in the early management route, in the early management pillars, what you see is that go with some pilots, right? What you want to do not just think of all of this from a desk. Right? In the end, it will be mostly behind a desk, but don't make this whole system perfect based on that one project or those 10 projects that you did in the past. No, take your current best and run a project with the very distinct extra goal of checking this, right? Not at the end of the project, already during the project, at every stage. Be thinking about this checklist, be thinking about the stage gates, be thinking about how did we actually get all of the info. So basically what you do there, and this one I hope you like, you plan, do, check, act, the process of how do we run our projects, how do we have our support documentation, and how can we move work to the design phase before we touch the actual operation in an effective way. So for that, don't focus on one of these three. All of them are important. Run 1 or 2 pilot projects. If to, run them roughly at the same time. And then when you're quite a way through that project, or maybe even have already finished it, you get into that good evaluation and adjusting, and you look at, okay, so what did we, after the first stage gate, already go to the business owner, go to your finance, operational directors, but also go to your maintenance and engineering teams on site. Did you get the info you need? Is this good? Is it not good? Spend time on that. That is the investment you make in making your early equipment, early product management better. Check where everything came from. How easy was it? But also specifically spend some time afterwards if we're, for instance, looking again at more maintenance related things that we encountered, issues, problems, improvement ideas. Go to that maintenance team, have a workshop specifically for that project, for that pilot project, where afterwards you again ask, these were the learnings that we took, these were the sources that we looked at, this is the info we got. Did we actually miss anything now that we're already a bit further down the road? And the thing is, and you will have noticed this probably with previous projects, as soon as the engineering is already a bit further along and the design is more or less fixed, that for some reason is one of the times that maintenance technicians, plant engineers, that they start to complain about that learnings were not taken into the design, or they didn't listen to us. Now, that may be true that they didn't listen to you, but it can really be because they don't know where to listen, how to listen. Maybe they have listened to your colleague who doesn't know. So how can you make that in a good way? Because of course, communication can always be better. We should also not be spending 5 times as much time on it for maybe 1 to 2 times as much profit coming back from it. So there is a balance, but we do that continuous learning on how we manage new products and new equipment. That is basically the key of this pillar. Now, after a couple of pilots, we will say, okay, now we see that it's working, right? All of the projects that we do with our new methodology, they really work a lot better. That is the point where the route steps on, and now we're going to roll this out to all of the projects that we do. Of course, as soon as you do that, you will get into some new issues, some things that you have to tweak. That's all okay, but know that when you do an early equipment management pillar, start up with what do we actually have? Pilot it. Ignore 80% of your projects. Focus on those 1 or 2 projects that you're going to take as your pilot. The other ones, they can just do what they want. Well, not what they want, but they can do whatever your company has as their current standard. And after a number of consecutive pilots, when you know, oh yeah, now that system, that's working, we're happy with it, then you roll it out. So I hope that that focuses you on what early equipment management, what early project management, product management are about, roughly how that route should be built up, and that focus on pilot first, implement broadly later. And you focus on moving away from the cost purely for the project to, in the early equipment management, the cost for sort of the life cycle, but especially in the beginning, just for production as well, right? The project as engineering and impact on production together, cost. And for your product management, you move from purely making a product that consumers will love to making a product, designing a product that consumers love and can be made in our operations. So take that part of the operational consequences back into the design in a very early stage and really build on it. And if your machine has to go half as fast, that can be okay, but your product will be more expensive. It will have ramifications on your supply chain. Is it then still a good product or not? But you don't want those as surprises after you launch it. If you need to install a completely new line, it may be still a good choice, even though it's probably super expensive and very risky for your business, so it's usually not good, but it may be. But you need to know that way before you enter the startup phase and start messing up the rest of your operation. Now, those are the two focuses. But the methods, they are basically the same. So if you have questions on that, do sort of the same as Oatly is doing at the moment. Work with me as a consultant or work with other EPM consultants, but this is one of the things that I do for companies. Explain this, help pillars, help operational excellence teams on site at the global level, wherever you need the support to make the theory, the methods work for your company. Work in practice, translate to what your needs are. If that is something that might interest you, leave a comment, a direct message, get me on LinkedIn. Really just quick contact. I will do the rest after that. For all of you who just loved to know what this pillar is all about, hit that like button and I will see you in next videos. Don't forget to always enjoy the continuous improvement journey.